The next time your patient is performing a row, I want you to watch their form, and then when they're done, I want you to ask them this. Did you feel your back? It sounds really simple, but a lot of our patients don't actually feel their back when performing any type of rowing motion. And the reason for that comes down to these three compensations. So what I want you to do is to grab a pen, a paper, your phone, jot down these compensations, and we're going to talk about how to fix it, and then we're going to demonstrate it. But I want to make sure you have these down. So number one, excessive humeral extension. This means that the arm goes way too far back, and we're not actually working our back. More to come on that. Number two, write down minimal scapular retraction. And number three, excessive upper trap. Those are the three big compensations as to why most patients don't feel their back. Now, to get them out of this is what we want to start to do. Teach end position. So to avoid excessive humeral extension, we need to get them aware as to what the proper end position is, because this is the wrong one, and we're going to teach them the right one. Number two, to fix minimal scapular retraction, we want to focus on teaching them protraction. When you teach people the opposite motion, it's really easy to then go into the motion that you're looking for them to do. And finally, excessive upper trap. What we're going to do is teach them to be shoulders down. So to avoid these compensations in purple, we are going to teach them and increase their awareness of the green. Let's jump into it. So let's use a dumbbell row for our demonstration. But it doesn't matter if you're using a cable row, a barbell row, a kettlebell, vertical, horizontal, low. We need to make sure our patients understand rowing mechanics. And to be fair, rows are tricky. It's not like your legs or your chest or your arms where you get this direct feedback and you can see it. It's all about sensation. So it tends to get lost. So the first thing that we need to get our patients super familiar with is to avoid excessive humeral extension. Now, we don't need to tell them excessive humeral extension, but here's the thing, and this is why they do it. Their brain is tricking them and making them believe that they're getting more because they're going through a greater range of motion. For example, we should be ending by our side, but most people's rows go here. Your brain or their brain believes that here gets more back muscles, but all we're doing is going through excessive humeral extension. We're rolling the shoulder forward, and we're not actually getting more scapular retraction. So we're not working the back muscles more. Remember, the goal of the row, for most cases, is to work the back muscles, and specifically get scapular retraction in the rhomboids and the mid-traps, right? So the brain is tricking them here. So we need to get them really familiar with ending with this endpoint, but also feeling the shoulder blade muscles. Because the first time you go to do this with someone, they're going to say, I don't feel my back muscles. They think that they need to be here. So get them super familiar with by ending in line with their ribs. If you want, you could put a constraint there, something that blocks them and they can touch just so they start to build awareness. But awareness is key, ending in line with the ribs. And that brings us to our second point. Most patients have minimal scapular retraction. And it's partly because what we just said. They go through excessive humeral extension and they don't actually retract the scapula. Now, how do we start to fix this? We need to teach them the opposite. We need to teach them protraction so then they can better feel retraction. So an easy way to do this is to bring the arm forward, have them protract, retract, protract, retract. The thing is, it's usually not going to be this easy. Usually what's going to happen is on protraction and retraction, they're going to try to suck their shoulder up to their ear, and they're going to really struggle and want to bend the elbow. So a great analogy you can use is to tell Mr. and Mrs. Jones that they have a tube that is running from all the way through their lower arm to the upper arm to the shoulder. and that tube does not allow them to bend their elbow. So how would they start to remove their arm from the tube? They would have to start to do this. So this is the motion. So really get them familiar with protraction, retraction. That's step one. But step two, make sure they're doing it correctly. Make sure we are keeping that elbow locked and we are keeping the shoulder down. The third and final step is to make sure to avoid upper trap activation. So many people go into a rowing motion, and it's similar to our humeral extension where the brain starts to trick us. It's trying to feel more that it doesn't really know how to get, and so it just starts doing elevation, and you start to get the upper trap. And a lot of times people will do rows and they feel upper trap tightness and pain and burning, sometimes even headaches. Why? Because we are just cranking a row with the upper trap. So I like to really get people aware of that with the protraction and retraction drill. This is a really nice way to help them understand to be away from the ear. If you need to, crank it up. Tell them to do it here. Let them feel what this feels like. And then tell them to relax it. And they'll be like, oh my gosh, whoa, right? And they start to feel the extreme ends. If they can start to feel and be aware of extreme right versus wrong, then they usually tend to live in the middle or closer to right. Now, with that being said, now we need to go through the mechanics. That's just avoiding the compensations. What do we want to start to think about and coach to actually teach it? What I like to do is to combine protraction and retraction into what we think of the row. So I like to tell patients that we are going to start the movement with a slight retraction, and as we continue to retract, the elbow bends and we get to this end point. Body weight tends to be the best because they can really start to play around. The key here is that once they get to their end range, you need to ask them, do you feel your back muscles? If they don't, then they need to retract a little more. Not extend through the humerus, retract. They need to get really confident what that retraction piece feels like in conjunction with the movement of the arm. Because as you do this, they'll either do this and then this, or they'll kind of do this and then say, oh shoot, I got to go here. So it's learning how to sync the motion of the arm going through flexion and extension, flexion of the elbow, extension of the humerus, while we are retracting the scapula. And the way to do that is to retract, start flexing the elbow, continue retracting, get to your end point by your side. Where do you feel it? You feel the shoulder blade muscles? Great. So if your patient is struggling how to feel that scapular traction as tension builds, grab a band, or you can use a TRX, and have them go through the protraction, retraction, ending in the right position and feeling the shoulder blades. Now, if they're still not feeling it with this, then an easy thing we can do is to have them go into scapular retraction and just take baby steps out. Such a simple but powerful exercise. What you want to do is make sure the hips are kind of back so they can maintain the scapular traction and not just maintain it by going into extension. So you want to be pretty upright or slightly flexed, feel the shoulder blades, and walk out. It's a great exercise because it not only allows them to understand how to maintain scapular retraction, but it's also teaching them how to avoid the compensation of excessive humeral extension, as well as extending through the spine.